Welcome back to Session 0, where I mostly discuss Dungeon World. Today, I want to take those cards I used in my Heroes of Terranoth video and create a new adventure idea. Stick around, and I'm going to do the randomization, and then talk about my ideas for making an adventure. Alright, these are the two decks that I'm going to be using. They're from Heroes of Terranoth and Warhammer Quest the Adventure card game. The locations are all shuffled together, the enemies are all shuffled together, but I have done three things different. Number one, all of the locations and enemies that I drew in that video have been removed so we don't see them again. Number two, in the enemy deck, I have removed the second and third copies of all the enemies. That just makes this deck a lot easier to shuffle. Number three, from Warhammer Quest, the adventure card game, these are legendary pieces of equipment that your heroes can find during the campaign. Now, there are two missing from this stack because I have them with certain heroes in my campaign. I haven't finished that campaign yet. So there are going to be two that won't be in this randomization, but that's fine. So let's just shuffle up locations. I'm going to deal 3. Abandoned Mines. Villainous Sanctum. And a Riverbank. We're going to use those to create an adventure. We're going to do the same with our enemies. See what kind of enemies may end up showing up in those locations. Ghoul, I love some undead. Rat Swarm. And a Goblin Witcher. That's fun. That's not just a goblin, that's a goblin who does some magic. Let's do one more piece of randomization. Let's get a legendary piece of equipment as some inspiration for what we might find along the way, or even the purpose of this mission. Maybe someone has hired you to find the Book of Grudges. So that's part one of this. Part two, I'm going to take all of this upstairs and we are going to create an adventure idea out of these cards. So you are going to hear a little bit of a change in audio and volume because upstairs I will be recording off of a mic. Hopefully it won't be too jarring though. All right, let's start with what the GM knows. And right now, the only thing I know is the GM is these locations, these enemies, and this Book of Grudges. Now, big thing about Book of Grudges is it's very much a Warhammer artifact, so I don't want to use that name. On the way upstairs, I actually had the name of Book of Names. And there are two things I think about that. Number one, we are going to go ahead and say this was a Dwarven mine. This was a Dwarven artifact. And I think this book holds the hereditary lines of the Dwarven royal lines. And that'll be, multiple Dwarven royal lines. Let's say there were a lot of Dwarven kingdoms in this particular world. One really key thing, I think, is, and the reason I like Book of Names, it has the true names of some demons. 3. It has the true name of 3 demons. That would make this book very valuable to a lot of people. We're also going to go up here and say, I like the idea. This does kind of have that Mines of Moria vibe. This was abandoned because of these goblins, the Goblin Witchers, because of the goblins. And these mines became their lair. And this riverbank, and this is actually a cool idea, Because something I was thinking about when I was making that Webway, I do think a Webway can make sense here in these abandoned mines, because one of those options is they don't start to fall. And I think if they do fall, they're going to fall into water, and then they'll be swept out of the mines along a river and end up on a riverbank somewhere. So that's a cool way to tie the Webway into these abandoned mines. Let's see. Goblin Witcher, I think Ghoul doesn't really seem to fit. I mean, it might fit, but I don't think it fits because, you know, ghouls just kind of care about eating rotten flesh or dead flesh. I'm going to call these Goblin Shamans. And they raise their dead for defense. And that kind of lets me change this ghoul, not just to zombies, but goblin zombies. I think that's something cool we don't see enough of in gaming. So these I'm going to change to Goblin Shamans. They raise their dead to help defend their lair. Now, let's see. I do want to tie this to Bucksburg. So there's actually like 3 different ways I could tie this to Bucksburg, I think. So that sorcerer, I'm just going to call him the Bucksburg sorcerer here, is looking for that book, or maybe just information about the book. Looking for information about Book of Names. And that's why he ended up in Bucksburg. He was able to trace it to Bucksburg. How did he trace it to Bucksburg? I think these goblins, some of these goblins fled. Peaceful goblins fled. And established the Bucksburg Warren. And this sorcerer has information leading him to believe that this Book of Names is with these goblins in the Bucksburg Warren. Now, these goblins, I think they just didn't like the fact that their shamans were raising the dead. They don't want to be raised themselves, so they left. Let's do a couple more randomizations. How long ago was this abandoned? Or were these mines abandoned because of the goblins? I'm going to do D6 times 10. It was 30 years ago that this was abandoned. So there are probably some people in Bucksburg who might still remember the dwarves. That's important. And I'm going to say might. I think I just said dwarves too. I meant to say the dwarvens, the dwarves. Because that was only 30 years ago. Now, did these peaceful shamans or peaceful goblins who fled to this warren outside of Bucksburg, was that right away or has it been recent? If I'm going to roll a d20, if it's even, it is that they fled right away. Odd, and that was just a recent thing. Okay, this was recent. Peaceful goblins fled recently fled to the Bucksburg Warren. And I actually kind of like that. Here's how I can tie Webway in now. Since this was recent and not 30 years ago, these goblins haven't been outside of Bucksburg for 30 years. I wonder if some of the spiders from the Webway came with these goblins. Where, did they hide in their sacks or hide in their clothes, whatever, and come to the Bucksburg Warren? If they did, that is the cause, the origination of the spiders we see that have now taken over the Bucksburg Warren. So again, let's roll a d20. Even, no. Odd, yes. are the goblins, are the spiders in Bucksburg from the Webway? Even no odd yes. Yes, they are. And I may have said that backwards a moment ago, but these spiders from Webway. Yeah, let's do that properly. Webway clung to fleeing goblins. And that is how spiders from this mine, which was abandoned 30 years ago, came to this Bucksburg Warren. I think these goblins have interacted with the people of Bucksburg for a while. They've shown that they are peaceful, but now they haven't been around in a while, and that's because these spiders are starting to take over their warren. Now, one of the things I said in that video was, and maybe I didn't say it, maybe I was just thinking it, some goblins have not been ensnared and wrapped up. How many, I'm going to call them free, how many free goblins are there? Ooh, 12. There are only 12 free goblins. And these free goblins can talk to the characters. They can talk to other people. I typed a 2 there. Should be a 12. They can interact with people. So at some point I'll make some goblin names. So I think what I want to do, I am going to spruce up Bucksburg a little bit. This kind of becomes a hub. I'm just going to put that right up here. Bucksburg becomes hub. Because that'll give us some, a lot of different ways now to funnel characters to Bucksburg. And of course, that's not railroading. I think a lot of times we have to have something in our back pocket to help the characters along. I've played a lot of games where the players just don't know what to do next. They don't know what to go or where to go next. And I think this is a problem with the GM. I could have done a much better job explaining other things that are out in the world. And this is, again, I think going to become a hub where players can learn information about these spiders, about these goblins, maybe about the dwarves that used to live here. Maybe they can learn of the Book of Names. Maybe they can learn of these demon names, and they are trying to find this Book of Names because they've learned about these demons. So you can work in little threads to existing storylines and just see if they bite on them. If they bite on them, they can go there. If they don't bite on them, they've still heard about them, and then you can start crossing off grim portents on some of those dangers. So I think what I want to do, let's do Cobb here. Cobb Jameson. I think in next week's video, what I'm going to do is run Cobb through this area. Now, I have a couple different ways I can do this. I can either say this is something that happened before Cobb went to the Sukotan prison pits, or I can say that this is sometime after, and we've just had a time jump, and he has escaped the prison pits. He's gotten his signature weapon back, and now he's out in the wild again, being an adventurer. So I don't know if I want to do flashback or time jump, and I will figure that out. Because next week I do think I want to run a character through this, and maybe let's put a question mark up here too. Maybe I don't do that with Jane. Maybe I do that with that solo wizard character that I talked about recently. So we'll decide on that, and then next week will be a solo game. I am going to spruce up Bucksburg just a little bit, and then I'll explain that and do some solo in that region next week. All right, these are my thoughts. See, and this is why I call this What the GM Knows. This is not the linear progression of of an adventure. These are just the ideas I have and how I'm going to spruce up Bucksburg. They may not even go to this layer. Whoever I end up using as a solo character may not go to these mines. It sounds like it could end up being, you know, really close to Bucksburg. I think, though, because this is a cool way, and I do want to use the Webway in a solo video. I really love the Webway. I'm going to say here that while this sorcerer is looking for information about Book of Names, and that led him to this Bucksburg Warren, the Book of Names, not in Bucksburg. I think this means this Book of Names is still going to be in these abandoned mines, that it was not smuggled out by these goblins. I think it would have been really good for them to smuggle this out, but then that gives us another danger. If the book is still in this mine, this goblin lair, then maybe these shaman don't know about it yet because it's been 30 years. However, they are looking for it because they know that it holds the name of demons. So that gives us another danger. Put it up here. Danger. Let's just say demon summon. So that is another danger I can build for in and around this Bucksburg area and really just flesh out this region a little bit more. So that's it. That's all I wanted to do today. Randomize and then talk about my thought process while I'm using some of these random elements. So let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and sub. It really does help the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with some solo play. Have a great day.